Universal design is an architectural principle that recognizes it's easier and more cost-efficient to design a building with upfront accommodations to support all types of people. Consider a ramp. A ramp may be a requirement by law to accommodate someone in a wheelchair, but this simple accommodation can help many different types of people. For example, parents with baby strollers, children with short legs, and anyone with knee problems. Including a ramp in the initial design is best for everyone. Universal design for learning recognizes that the same is true for curriculum. The best way to create an inclusive learning environment is to provide upfront accommodations that can support all types of learners. Traditional differentiation accommodates certain students based on assessed weaknesses, but UDL intends to accommodate every student and provide the most effective learning experience for everyone. A UDL learning environment provides all students with an equal opportunity to succeed because it offers flexibility in the way students can access the material, engage with it, and demonstrate their abilities. The ultimate goal of UDL is for all students to become expert learners. The UDL inclusive pedagogical approach focuses on designing physical, social, and academic spaces to provide universal access to a range of learners. This is achieved by teachers knowing their students' interests, backgrounds, strengths, weaknesses, and how they learn, and proactively implementing a plan to meet those needs. The approach promotes students' voice and choice and gives them ownership of their learning. Lesson planning incorporates scaffolded learning strategies for instructions, assessments, and engagements to provide successful opportunities for all learners. The principles of UDL attend specifically to each of the 3 neural networks that influence learning. These neural networks work together to create learning in its truest form. The affective networks are located in the middle of the brain. They deal with developing preferences and priorities and interests. They are essential to students wanting to learn. The recognition networks are located in the back of the brain. The best example of recognition networks is when you answer the phone and you know immediately who's speaking on the other end because you recognize their voice. This is how fluently we want students to recognize information. Teachers can activate recognition networks by representing materials in many different ways. The strategic networks are located in the front of the brain. They work together with the recognition networks to assimilate new knowledge and to complete projects. The first guideline is to provide multiple means of engagement. This is dealing with why students learn, the affective network of the brain. Learners should be provided with multiple and diverse ways to be involved with course content, peers, and the teacher. Guideline number 1 reminds teachers that curriculum must address why students learn, or the motivation of learning. The affective networks of the brain are crucial to learning. and determine how learners get engaged, stay motivated, interested, excited, and challenged. By providing diverse engagement opportunities, teachers can help students see the relevance of disciplinary knowledge in their academic, professional, and personal lives. To adhere to guideline number 1, teachers must reflect upon how can I recruit and capture interest? How can I foster self-regulation? And how can I sustain interest and persistence? Consider this classroom scenario in a grade 6 math class discussing integers. A teacher can adhere to guideline number 1 by throughout the lesson the students can meet the objective by engaging in multiple ways. They can engage in hands-on activities, technology, authentic learning with real-world examples, collaboration, music, and art, just to name a few. Guideline number 2 is to provide multiple means of representation. This is the what of learning. Learners differ in the ways that they perceive and comprehend information that is presented to them. Teachers must consider presenting information in more than one format. This can help different groups of learners in different ways without compromising the learning outcomes. There is not one means of representation that will be optimal for all learners. Providing options for representation is essential. The content must be accessible to learners through various formats that are compatible with accessibility technology. It's advantageous to employ a range of media to enhance learning and use videos with closed captioning and subtitles, especially to support our ESL students. To adhere to guideline number 2, teachers must reflect upon what do my students need to know, how many ways can the information be represented, and does every student have access to the materials and the methods of instruction. Consider this classroom scenario in a 7th grade math classroom discussing solving equations. A teacher can provide multiple means of representation. One way would be for students to explore solving equations by experimenting with a balance scale. This will support kinesthetic learning and build foundational understandings of equality, and is accessible to every type of student, regardless of physical impairments, their academic levels. Everyone can work together. Another form of representation is for students to observe models of solving equations with a video. The models can be presented in audio form and visual form, 2 different representations. Subtitles can be used for ESL learners, again another representation. And graphic organizers can be completed while the students watch the video to bring in even another representation. Another idea is for students to observe operational key terms in digital text. In digital text, the colors, the fonts, the sizes can be manipulated to support various levels of visual impairments and speech-to-text functions. Also, embedded hyperlinks can provide additional information and examples for struggling learners, as well as enrichment for students who are ready to move on. The text in a digital text can easily be copied and pasted to a translation platform for ESL learners. Another way to represent this is through real-world problems that can be created by the students. When students create the problems, it can represent the diversity of the cultures, the language, and the academic levels in the classroom. Students work together to solve these problems, then it's broadening their diversity. The third guideline is to provide multiple means of action and expression. This is the how. Student understanding can be influenced by physical abilities, cultural abilities, prior knowledge, and personality. Because student understanding comes in a variety of forms, the opportunities to express it should represent the same diversity. Learning tools must be physically accessible to all learners. A variety of tools must be used to provide access to media, communication, and expression. Students must be supported at a variety of levels to promote self-responsibility of their learning as a means of executive functioning. To adhere to guideline number 3, teachers must reflect upon how will my students show me what they have learned? How will they demonstrate mastery of learning? Consider this classroom scenario in a grade 8 math class discussing geometric transformations. These objectives can be met using a multiple means of action and expression. Through formative assessment, we could use oral expression and ask the students to answer a question orally, such as, how do you know this figure has been translated? They can represent themselves with creative representation by drawing the transformation. They can engage in kinesthetic representation by demonstrating the transformation with a partner. And they can engage in written representation, explaining a question such as, what is the degree of rotation and how do you know? All of these ways provide a way for students to express what they know and what they understand in a way that maybe is more applicable to each learner. Concerning summative assessments, there are just as many ways for students to engage in action and expression. These student options are essential so that they can find what works best for them in a way that is best to show what they know and how they have learned. While the teacher provides multiple options for action and expression, the students should be the ones that choose for themselves because they will know best. Now let's implement these guidelines. Remember, guideline number 1 was to provide multiple means of engagement. So how does an educator engage all the students and their needs in a diverse classroom? One way is to encourage collaboration of differing forms so that a variety of interests can be addressed, embracing the diversity that's in the classroom. We can reflect on what suits the students more after surveying them on their interests, strengths, and needs. It's important to know your students. Provide alternative choices for students. And make it fun. If we want this to be engaging for the students, they have to enjoy learning. Multiple means of engagement could include podcasts, movies, games, collaborative learning, labs, writing and text, just to name a few. Now, guideline number 2 was to provide multiple means of representation. So how does an educator employ different methods to engage students with different learning styles? We can provide different presentation styles, for example, audio or visual, that represent similar information. We can help students to recognize and categorize new information. And we can use graphic organizers to highlight ideas, concepts, and their relationships. Multiple means of representation could include images, digital text, diagrams, animations, alternative text, subtitles, word art, manipulatives, again, just to name a few. Guideline number 3 was to provide multiple means of action and expression. So how do we help students show what they know? We can support students in accessing the differing options and tools to show their knowledge. Remember, just because they're given the choice does not mean that they necessarily know how to engage with that choice. We can teach them to plan ahead, manage their time, and set goals. Part of UDL is helping the students take responsibility for their own learning. Multiple means of action and expression could include portfolios, acting, graphic organizers, creating movies, essays, performance tasks, comic strip writing, and presentations. Teachers should align the 3 guidelines of UDL with 4 interconnected components of instruction, which are learning goals, assessments, instructional methods, and instructional materials. Let's begin with the first one of learning goals. Learning goals is the center of the wheel that we saw on the previous page, because the learning goals is what everything else should revolve around. To achieve UDL learning goals, the teachers and the students must take responsibility. Teachers must identify the instructional goals and define their expectations. They must set clear, observable, and measurable learning goals, also known as SMART goals. They must see that the goals address variability and needs of learners, and consider any barriers that the learners may face. The students must demonstrate understanding of the concepts, demonstrate understanding of the process. They must create and register their work in a format of their choice, and describe the process followed and their experience. The second component is assessments. Assessment is the process of collecting meaningful information of a learner's performance and using a variety of methods and materials in order to determine the learner's knowledge, skills, and level of motivation to take appropriate decision on their further educational course learning. The assessments must be directly in line with the learning goals. Again, teachers and students each have their own responsibilities. The teachers must constantly focus and monitor learner progress. They must measure both the process and the product. They must provide flexible options. Remember, UDL is all about giving students choice. They must create assessments relevant to the learning goals. They must actively involve the learners, and they must provide constructive feedback. The students must be aware of the learning success criteria, and they must be receptive to the feedback, and then act on that feedback. They must routinely self-assess their learning areas and produce content in their choice of learning. The third component is instructional methods. Supporting all three parts of the brain that involve learning, the affective network, the recognition network, and the strategic network with different instructional methods is key to working in this UDL framework. After setting clear goals and determining the assessment, then the teacher will choose the appropriate instructional methods to meet the goals to support success on the assessments. Instructional methods cover the strategies, approaches, and procedures a teacher implements to transfer the content information and engage students in learning. Teachers can support each neurological network by using methods such as these. For the affective network, remember this is the engaging of the students and making them want to learn, helping them understand why they are learning. You must give them choices for the content and the tools, give them flexible challenges, and give them choice for learning context. For the recognition network, we must provide multiple formats, support the background context, and provide multiple examples. And for the strategic network, we must provide ongoing, relevant feedback. We must offer flexible opportunities to demonstrate skills, and we must provide opportunities to practice. The last component is the instructional materials. Materials and resources are the medium through which the teacher transfers the content information to learners and engages them in the learning process. The chosen materials must align with the goals, foster proactivity among learners, provide flexible options, be relevant to the learning goals, and actively involve learners. UDL encourages flexibility in teaching and learning. Therefore, it's suggested that fixed mediums should be replaced with more flexible options. Consider this example when you are considering your instructional materials. A traditional printed media, the information is static. It cannot be manipulated or modified to suit individual needs. However, upgrading it to digital text means that you have multiple display options, you have text-to-speech options, you have accessibility options, you have additional embedded information such as hyperlinks, animations, and graphics. These digital texts will support many more types of learners and accommodate a much more diverse classroom. Here are a few resources that you can use as you continue your research about UDL. The CAST UDL Studio is an online studio where teachers can learn and share UDL-focused lessons. The UDL Tool Finder is a website that provides a list of UDL tools that target common learning barriers. And the UDL series CAST Professional Learning offers online webinars for professional development regarding UDL. You can Find these resources and many more at these two websites, Brooks Publishing and Connecticut Department of Education. All of these are hyperlinks that you can click on and continue your research if you choose. Inclusion. Remember, an inclusive classroom requires more than a one-size-fits-all approach to instruction. Universal design for learning can be used by educators to create or rework existing curricula to make it accessible to all students. UDL is organized under 3 guidelines: multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. The 3 guidelines support the 3 neural networks involved in learning: recognition, strategic, and affective. The UDL process is comprised of 4 components to help educators clarify how to apply UDL in the inclusive classroom: learning goals, assessments, methods, and materials. The UDL approach keeps expectations high, reduces or removes barriers to learning, provides flexible learning arrangements, and instruction for effective learning.